Of course.
Of course. Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. It's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi. Mark Zickery of Space Command with our dogs and with Aaron and Adam Sartain and
Hi, guys.
so forth. So here we are. We're ready to answer your questions. One thing, there's a question here. What's in the Space Command Super Package? 375. If you can show that, I would be very, truly grateful. The Super Package. That's a very good question. I don't have that at hand right now. It's Ryan Husk, who runs our campaign, is overseeing those details. If you go on the Kickstarter campaign, it should say. I'm sure it's
I'm gonna go right now
can check
it out. And I believe we put in the description a link to the Kickstarter.
Yes, and now also I wanted to address some of the comments on the Kickstarter campaign. One of them was saying, when are we shipping the DVDs and Blu-rays? Our timetable, we're trying to get the second hour of the pilot finished by July 4th. We'll see how the coronavirus and all that impacts that, but we're cranking along with visual effects and everything. So the plan would then be to manufacture the DVDs and Blu-rays and send them out then, because sending out the first hour as a Blu-ray or a DVD would just didn't make any sense to then send out Blu-rays and DVDs for hour 2 as well. So, and since so many people watch digitally anyway, we sent out the digitals. If you're a Kickstarter backer or an investor on Space Command, if you haven't gotten the downloadable content of the entire full first hour, which we just posted a few weeks ago, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to send it to you. It's got the first hour. It's got trailers for 5 hours beyond that. It's got a featurette that introduces Angelique Scott's character, Delaney Chilton. And so definitely make sure you see it. So that's the plan with the DVDs and Blu-rays. We've not at all forgotten that, nor do we intend to. Beyond that, what I'm doing right now is, while we're working on in post on hours 2 and 3, while we're prepping to shoot hour 4, I'm also now starting to work on a Space Command episode, an extra episode that we can do with our actors recording their roles in their own places, with green screen and whatever. I'm looking at shots we haven't utilized yet, just seeing what I can do. Mike Harney is aboard for this, Ethan McDowell, Brian McClure. I'm going to be reaching out to all of our actors in the next day or two to see who's aboard, and then I'll craft a story and a script, and off we go.
Update on Rose Kirby's question.
Yes.
I'm not seeing the 375 Space Command Super Package. I think that might be for a prior campaign.
Huh.
So I'm going to look that up.
Right. And this campaign specifically is Space Command
Forgiveness Part 2.
Space Command Forgiveness Part 2. Yeah, that's the current campaign.
Okay.
Okay. Great, thanks. I'm asking if you could ever show that package. We'll track it down.
Yeah.
And we've been working very hard to get everyone the perks from the previous campaigns. And of course, the ones that are sent digitally are easier to send out, because the ones that we mail cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So it's always a question of balancing between sending out the perks and getting the show done. And we've sent out almost all the major perks in terms of patches, posters, on and on and on. My gosh, you name it, but tons of stuff. But there's more to come, signed photos, various things we're going to be sending out in the next few weeks. And in fact, I have to sign 100 photos of myself today.
And so. From my end, what our team is doing is we have put every perk, every single individual perk. Not talking about packages. We've expanded the packages because people in one package are getting stuff that people in another package are also getting. So we've individualized each perk,
right?
If you got, say, the super package, you're getting a certain. There's a list of all the things. So I've delineated each item that you individual donors are getting, so that everyone who's getting the DVDs, for example, is all lumped into one group.
Yes.
Everyone who is getting the digital download or associate producer credit, et cetera, are all lumped into one group, and we are delivering each individual perk one at a time.
Yeah.
That's what we've been doing. We're physical part as far as physical perks go. We are currently working on sending out autographed headshots. The
photos of our cast. Yeah.
Photos of our cast.
Yeah.
We even discuss how we're going to do that, because we don't want to give you, 2 photos of Angelique. I mean, she's very nice to look at, but we don't.
Yeah, so it's basically sending you photos of everyone, that we've promised. And
we're randomizing that,
yes,
so that not everyone's not going to get a photo of Doug Jones, but
yes,
quite a few will, because he was very generous and signed
photos,
tons and tons of photos.
Yeah. And by the way, for Rose, since she's in the UK, this is the shirt I just got, the Charles Chilton Journey into Space shirt. Journey into Space was a terrific radio play in the UK in the 50s, and they also did a comic strip in the Weekly Express in the 50s. And so Charles Chilton in Space Command is named after that author, and Delaney Chilton, of course, is named after Chilton and also Samuel R. Delaney. So, and Rose, to answer your question, yes, Space Command Redemption, that's our 2-hour pilot. We've completed the first hour. If you've not received the link to watch and or download that, definitely you should get that. And we're just moving along. I mean, it's Forgiveness is the 3rd and the 4th episodes. Great Solar War will be the 5th and the 6th, etc. Empire is the 7th and the 8th. Harvester is the 9th and the 10th, and Mousetrap is the 11th and 12th. That makes up the 12-hour season. So plus there's the prequel, which we've done as an audio play, and a graphic novel, which we're now completing. And
is there a name for the prequel?
United Planet.
United Planet, yeah.
And then also we're doing this new extra free episode of Space Command that we're pulling together now. So that's the news.
I found the super package. So I'm going to go through each individual item here. Very special thanks credit. Everyone should have gotten their special thanks credit. If you haven't gotten you'll be on IMDb and in the credits. We made a list of everyone, gave it to our editor, and our editor put it in there.
Yes.
For the end credits, and then for IMDb, I've done quite a few of those, and other people on our team have done that as well. If you haven't, especially if you're not on IMDb, we can fix that very quickly.
Yes.
So send me an email at I'm gonna put our email in the chat. Space Command Perks at gmail.com. Send us an email. I'll fix those credits very quickly.
Right.
Also, a 8x10 mini poster autographed by the cast. We are getting those autographs as we speak. Yeah. We're collecting them.
Yes.
So that's next in line.
Yep.
5 times autographed 8x10 cast photos. So like I said earlier, you're not going to get 5 photos of Doug Jones. You'll get one of Doug Jones, one of Mike Harney, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, our stars.
Right.
Yeah.
Autographed page 1 of the Space Command script.
Yay.
I believe that's on hold until we get the cast together again, which
and we can print it out and I can sign them and so forth. I mean, it's there's things
that's in the, but it's in the phone conversation with Mark Zickery.
Here we are.
Yeah, we have we have quite a few of those, and we are working those out and planning those out.
Great.
Autographed Space Command Blu-ray. Yeah, that's the one we've been.
That's
the Blu-rays and the DVDs.
We're knocking them down one at a time, so it's getting all of this done.
We're not in the era of Spaceballs where they have instant cassettes.
but that said, it's very important for us that everyone gets everything. And, there were people who were thinking, well, you'll never finish these 2 hours. Well, now we're almost done and moving on to hours 3 and 4. It's, it's taken longer than we hoped it would take, but we are on track and we are very committed to what we're doing, God knows. And, but also just to let you all know, we're right now, the CW is considering Space Command. Amazon is actively considering Space Command. There's a lot happening. And, now also in terms of the Kickstarter campaign, the current one, any bit, any money you can throw at that. We've got 6 days, and it's at 49,000 now. But if it goes below 48 for any reason, we don't get any of it. and that will be a major challenge. And so that's where everyone, even if it's a matter of a few dollars, it helps. And so that's much appreciated. And I see Carlos. Hi, Carlos. Good to have you aboard here on our interesting little Sunday version of Mr. Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
And again, this time is to basically talk to our fans, talk to our backers, and answer questions. Yeah, sure. Eric Berg asks, can I send video auditions to be cast in future episodes? Sure, you bet. But also there's a pledge on the Kickstarter campaign where you can have a speaking role or a cameo or whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
And for those, again, we are working on those, but we're not filming right now. But when we do get to filming, we'll be incorporating those roles.
Yes.
There was also a virtual walk-on role.
Yes, exactly.
Which we're working on that. We're gonna get those integrated into the show.
Yes.
We have not forgotten about you.
No, not at all. And again, it's just a matter of taking the time to do things right, and that's what we're embarked upon. I was just talking to Maya Bonhoff a few minutes ago. She's written the Space Command novel, and it has the connective tissue between the first 2-hour story and the second 2-hour story, and that's going to be available in the next few weeks. There's a beautiful cover.
And again, some of the earlier Kickstarters, there was a perk where
for that novel
you get to be written into the novel.
Oh, that's fun. That's very fun. Yes, and so we have to flag that for Maya and make sure that's been done. So that will be another thing on the to-do list.
Yes.
So exactly. So and yeah, John, I see you've come aboard here. Yeah, it's good to see your
John
name.
Ferreira.
Exactly.
Good to
yes.
see you.
And again, if anyone hasn't subscribed to Mr. Sci-Fi, definitely do so. It's I'm checking in pretty much every day. It's a good way to follow Space Command. Exactly. And Rose, yes. So the novel, all of those things, we're going to have them available, and so that's
yes.
Don't worry.
Rose mentions the ebook,
yes,
which is basically the making of Space Command. We've already finished the first chapter and
first couple chapters,
couple chapters.
Yeah. So we're talking. I've been talking to David Bartlett about ways to pick up the pace on that. But we also have my Star Trek scrapbooks as an ebook, and that's very fun. And as a video of me talking about, this is the scrapbook I kept when Star Trek was on, when I was 10 years old, and when I met Nichelle Nichols and all of that. And these articles on Star Trek from all these different magazines and photographs and all sorts of things. There's nowhere else you can find this material. It doesn't exist anywhere else. It's the personal scrapbook that I kept, 2 volumes, and so it's a very fun thing for those of you who are Trekkies, and most of us, I think, are one way or another. So and also I just commented yesterday on Picard, on the finale, and so you could check that out when you're done with the live stream. And but yeah. Now, when Rose is saying, is it like a Kindle? It will be, yes, and we'll make it available in the formats that it needs to be in. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, or as a PDF or whatever, we'll get it in those formats for you.
Yeah. So, hi, Sci-Fi lover. I'm glad you're checking in here. And again, just to bring everything into perspective. So, with Space Command, we've reopened the studio. We're shooting. We're about to shoot the 4th hour. So we're building the alien hibernation ship. We're building the 8-foot-tall aliens. We're in post-production on 2 and 3. And what that means, hours 2 and 3. And what that means is we're adding visual effects, color correction, sound design, music, all the things that make something look like a polished professional production. And so we have people working round the clock on that right now. And and Mitch Suskin has just joined our visual effects team. He's actually helped us before. He's a 3-time Emmy winner for Star Trek Discovery. It was Star Trek Voyager, Enterprise, and Lost are his 3 Emmys. And then he also has worked on Star Trek Discovery more recently. And, he's very, very, very much a fan of Space Command and what we're doing. And I've known him for a long time.
And if you've watched, I believe either Instagram or YouTube, and Orville, which is on Fox, has been putting out before and after things of them adding their visual effect shots.
That's fun.
I think a lot more people now are realizing, there's a lot of visual effects that go into sci-fi shows, especially.
Well, yeah, there's 900 visual effects shots in the first hour of Space Command and 900 in the second hour. So that's a huge amount. And
which is unprecedented.
For something on this level.
Especially for something, We're doing something for a fraction of the price of the big studios.
Yes.
It's incredible what I've seen that we've has come out with the first hour.
I'm very proud of it. And so should we all be. And we have a small team of very devoted people, and we're all, of course, staying safe during this time with the coronavirus, keeping it to small numbers of people, all of that stuff. We're here in California, we're in lockdown, basically. Yes, I agree with Classy Cannabis. Orville is closer to TNG than Picard.
Yeah.
And I haven't caught up with the more recent season of Orville, but I will. And Brandon Braga goes to my gym, so when we're not under lockdown, I see him every few days. But yes, I've liked the show. I think it's it's a very good effort, and we'll see. And also it's different tonally from Space Command, so it's nice that I'm in my own little area of storytelling that doesn't step on the toes of any of the other shows.
All right. Ian Hunter says, I'd love to see Erin Gray make a cameo.
Well, that's a great idea.
Erin
so
Gray,
I should reach out to her. She was wonderful, and that'd be great fun. I'm reaching out now. I've been in conversation with Nana Visitor and Jonathan Frakes and Gates McFadden and a lot of actors. Barbara Bain, I had lunch with her recently. She's going to be in Sweet Haven, the show I'm creating with Rockney O'Bannon, but also I want her in Space Command. So so there's a lot of fun stuff coming up.
I have a question.
Sure, you bet.
What do you think about Tim Allen being in Space Command?
That's a funny idea. That's fun. Well, basically the way it works with Space Command is it's usually either someone I know personally or someone who can reach out via, someone I know personally, where they can reach out to whomever. So Tim Allen, I'm game. Sure, you bet. And essentially there's so many wonderful actors who are connected to science fiction in one way or another, that would be wonderful in Space Command. Absolutely, you bet. And then it's just finding a role that's meaningful. Yes. So it's not just having their face appear on screen, but it's something where they're actually doing something that we can all enjoy.
Right.
Cool. So,
because I have a bit of a connection to him because I work on Last Man Standing.
Great.
And if we ever get a rap party,
sure, that's fun.
And I get there, I might be able to say, hey,
you never know.
Do you want to be a starship captain?
Yes, again.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's funny because you never know who's. It's worth asking people. It's worth seeing, because if they say no, you don't burst into flames usually. And, so yeah, and so you just being bold is a very good idea. So, and again, this time is for all of you to ask questions. Again, if you can help us with the Kickstarter campaign, it's much appreciated. If that money will be put to basically making Space Command. It's not. I'm not going to be buying a boat. So
Captain Mark Gray's joined us. Hey,
good to see you.
More power.
Yes. It was, yeah. It was, I often joke that my two favorite Star Trek movies are Galaxy Quest and Forbidden Planet. So, it's, they're both great. And for those of you who haven't seen those two movies, I highly recommend it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Very fun. So and then any other questions?
Here we go.
See. Sure, you bet.
That's Carlos says, I want some gear, to be honest.
Well, we have Space Command merchandise. Absolutely. If you look.
Oh, some gear.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah. I mean, we have Space Command shirts and jackets and models of the Paladin and insignia and buttons and patches and comic books and tons of stuff.
There's a store that I believe is.
Well, there's a store.
Below
here you can get T-shirts and a whole bunch of stuff. There's a Space Command store there, and then there's a secondary one that you can find via the Space Command website.
Yes.
But we're in the process of basically integrating all of it, so that you'll be able to access all the Space Command swag that you'd like. And of course, I love all the Space Command stuff. It's great fun.
Space Command socks. Eh?
Yes. That that keep your feet warm. Exactly. Let's see. Is there a perk that's got Blu-ray with it. Yes, there is, Rose. And
with all
yeah.
4.
Yeah, you can pledge that and get all 4. Yes, absolutely. And we're happy
as
to
soon
do
as
that.
we're finished
as soon as they're
with
finished,
post-production on them. Obviously, we can't give you what we don't have.
Yes, but we're picking up the pace significantly. I mean, we've basically been embarked upon building an in-house visual effects team that's very solid.
Yes.
And that's where we are now. That's again where it's very important that the Kickstarter campaign, I feel much more comfortable if we were back, if we were up around 55,000 or more, because right now we're at 49,000, and if we go below 48, we don't get any of it. So it's super important.
The danger of Kickstarter.
Yeah. And so that, because immediately what we'll put it toward is continuing to finish everything we're doing now. So very important.
I mean, the plan all along for the DVDs and Blu-rays was to release 1 disc of all of Redemption. So part 1 and part 2.
Yeah.
The first 2 1-hour episodes of Space Command.
And there's go ahead, please.
And we just haven't gotten to that point yet.
We're almost there.
We've finished the first hour, and we've released that as a digital download.
Yes.
Once the second hour is released, which should be around July sometime,
we're hoping,
is that's our deadline. That's our goal.
Yes.
And once that gets finished, we'll get the DVDs out of Redemption.
Yes.
And
we'll send all that stuff out, but also
send out the digital download of the second.
And there's a ton of extras that I've already started sending out, like my audio commentary, my video commentary on the first hour. Ethan McDowell and Brian McClure's audio commentary, video commentary on that same hour. We have tons of background material and all sorts of things. So, and also, by the way, if you regularly watch Mr. Sci-Fi, you'll see a lot of the work in progress of things, and you can see the enormous strides we've made in terms of just visual effect shots and finishing that first hour. It's the hour now is very, very different from the hour that we posted some time ago, and it includes more scenes in addition. So, if you think you've seen the first hour of Space Command, if you haven't watched the one we've released in the last few weeks, you haven't seen the first hour of Space Command at all. So we're very proud of where we are right now. So, but in terms of other things, what else can I tell you? We're still selling Space Command shares for $7,500 each. That helps a lot. You get a percentage of my producers' net profits in the first 4 episodes. You can just email me at markzickery@gmail.com to find out about that. And I know that we're all having a challenging time during the coronavirus, but we're moving ahead anyway, and we're all, our first goal is to keep everyone safe and keep everyone, healthy. But beyond that, we're not stopping work at all. If anything, I've ramped up. I'm working more now than I was before, because because I came up with this idea of doing an extra episode during the coronavirus, which is an interesting challenge, but it's a fun challenge. So I'll know more in the next few days as my brain informs me of what we're doing. I've certainly aspects of it, but I haven't pulled it together. The next step is really to reach out to my actors and see who wants to be part of it, and then I can start pulling it all together. I have some ideas at this point. And
Mark Cornwall says, big fan, but please guys, you should be 6 feet apart. Be safe.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair. Well, let's see. Yeah. Well, we can. Well, here, let's see. 6 feet.
Okay. We're being careful. We wash our hands and
but it's a point well taken.
Yes,
it's a point well taken.
True.
And
Eric Berg says, I'll see if I can give a bit more. Thank you, Eric Berg.
Thank you, Eric.
The show has to happen. Yes. Oh, and he gives his email. If you could send me an audition script to read in the future.
Sure. Let's make that happen.
I'll get that to Mark, and we'll
Absolutely. And again, many of you know that although I cast very famous actors like Mira Furlan, Bill Mumy, Bruce Boxleitner, James Hong, Robert Picardo, etc., Armin Shimmerman, we had a worldwide talent search for 2 of our leads, and we actually cast 9 of our actors from those auditions. So. And these are lead roles. Sarah Marafino, who plays Captain Essex, Ethan McClure, who plays Captain Jack Kemmer, Ethan McDowell, who plays Captain Jack Kemmer, Brian McClure, who plays Lieutenant Bradbury, etc., all came from those auditions and more. We cast about 9 actors. And so we are always looking for talented people, always.
Which is interesting. You can tell the story of how Sarah Marafino got cast.
Yes, it's very fun. It's very, very fun because what happened was the two roles that were offered for the Worldwide Talent Search were Captain Kemmer, who was a male role, and Cadet Bradbury, who'd be male or female. But Sarah Marafino decided to audition for Captain Kemmer. And I was so impressed with her audition that I created the role of Captain Laura Essex specifically for her. When we had callbacks, I met her and I liked her a lot, and that's how she came to be one of the lead characters in Space Command. So it was very exciting. And again, when we talked earlier about being open to what comes your way, I'm very much a proponent of that. So I'll have I've laid out the first year of Space Command and beyond. I know where the story goes, but within those parameters, I can always find the give and take to have a new idea enter in and make it deeper, better, etc. So very fun.
Rose Kirby says, I really want to thank you.
Great.
I love your videos.
Thanks.
And we have already got your email.
Yes, thank you, Rose.
Yeah.
And
thank you, Rose.
Yeah, and again, I love the fact that we are now a world community and we can reach everyone in the world. So whether you're in the UK or Kathmandu or wherever, if you can get online, you can be part of what we're doing. And I love that. And in fact, we had a Zoom meeting with some of our team, and some of them are in Atlanta and some of them are in New York and so forth. Well, one of our team is in Germany. And so we're not hampered in a way that we would have been 20 or 30 years ago. And I love that. And I love being able to have my own channel because, I can either put up, a cool hour of Space Command, or I can just talk about whatever I want to talk about that's related to science fiction. And I love that. And, and it's that technology makes it easy.
Yeah, and special shout out to all of our viewers in Kathmandu. And
yeah,
hey, you never know.
And then Mark Lungo asks, are there any LGBTQ characters in Space Command? Yes. Mira Furlan and Catherine McEwen are married in the show, and we haven't gotten to that point in the story yet, but they are. And so Mira's character is a lesbian and gay, and again, my whole idea is that characters that's a part of their life, but it's not their the point. Life. Yeah. It's everyone is just a character. Everyone is just like a person, and that was true of Bob being a Muslim, and etc. So, and again, it's very funny because I'm totally open to having characters with their own spirituality. That doesn't mean it's necessarily my spirituality, but I think that having a spiritual center, being open to kindness and compassion and others, and recognizing.
And have it part of their background, what makes them who they are.
Yeah. I mean, it's I feel really bad that the Greek pantheon died out, because I thought that was a cool one. Zeus, and I've got a statue of Athena in my bathroom, but it's just like, I grew up with the Greek myths when I was a kid. They were very much like superheroes to me, and
the gray-eyed goddess herself.
Yeah, many cool characters. So yes.
Subvids asks, did you mention you did writing for Sliders?
I was a writer producer on Sliders on the 4th season, so I wrote a bunch of those. About 19 of those 22 episodes kind of have my input very strongly in terms of structuring the stories, coming up with the ideas, writing the scripts. If it was a freelance script, I might have done a page 1 rewrite, but my name wouldn't be on it because I don't credit jump. It's not. I don't think it's appropriate. So, for instance, there was one that was sort of this Romeo and Juliet story of people who are plugged into the internet versus those who aren't, and I wrote that in its entirety pretty much, and even though my name's not on it. But I also wrote Slide Cage, and I wrote World Killer, and just a bunch of them, and it was great fun. I really loved it, and I'm very proud of the work that we did that season, the 4th season.
Oh, and he says, oh, okay, I watched a heap of them recently. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it was an extremely variable show because, for instance, the 3rd season, they were sort of doing movie ripoff of the week, and there was a lot of warfare in the writer's room. All of that was, those people moved on, and when I came aboard, I was given the task of fixing the show. And so Chris Black and Bill Dial and I, along with David Peckinpah, who was our showrunner, we made it work, and it was great fun. I had an office on the Universal lot, and we utilized tons of stuff from Universal, because I asked that question. I said, do we have access to every costume, prop, and set from anything Universal has ever made? And they said, well, we don't know, but we'll check, because I knew that Rod Serling had done that with the MGM for Twilight Zone. And then they came back and they said, yeah, with a very few exceptions, yes. So we used stuff from 12 Monkeys and Jurassic Park and on, and it gave us, and for instance, Time Cop, when Time Cop the TV series was canceled, they were just going to tear down all of those sets. So I immediately went onto those sets. They were great. And I thought up a Sliders story on the spot that could utilize those sets. It was Slide Cage, and so I told them to put a pin in those sets for us, and so we got $500,000 worth of sets for free, and that was great, really fun, really fun.
That's the great, collaborative aspect of Hollywood.
Yes,
is that you can reuse sets.
Yes,
you can reuse things that rather than remake it from scratch.
Yes. Well, I mean, again, it's also knowing the history of science fiction, television, and film. You have a lot of tricks up your sleeve. There was a question about One Step Beyond, right?
One Step Beyond, yeah.
And it's a fun show. It's ostensibly based on real life happenings, but that's not true, because at one point Charles Beaumont, who was a great writer on Twilight Zone, was writing a bunch of them, and one of his friends said, is it based on true things? He said, nah, we just make it up. So but I highly recommend the episode where they take magic mushrooms. That's definitely way ahead of its time, quite something. So but yes, it's a fun show. Well, that whole era of black and white science fiction on television is quite wonderful. And the black and white movies of the 50s, Came from Outer Space, all of those wonderful films. So let's see.
Rose Kirby again, from Derby. Space Command Redemption is part 1, Forgiveness is part 2.
You can go on the Kickstarter campaign and you can pledge for those things for a Blu-ray, but we haven't sent them out yet because we haven't finished the 2-hour pilot of Redemption, nor the 2-hour. We've shot the first 3 hours. So we shot all of Redemption, and we shot the first half of Forgiveness. The campaign we're running now is so we can shoot the 4th hour, the second half of Forgiveness. So we'll have 2-hour stories that are complete. And the season of Space Command is structured in 2-hour stories, 6 2-hour stories that split down the middle into hour episodes and tell a larger arcing story.
Right. So each story has 2 parts.
Yes.
So we've finished part 1 and part 2 of Redemption. That's the first one.
Yeah.
Well, we finished filming, we should say.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between filming it. I mean, we could give you the.
Yeah. No.
But you wouldn't like it.
Well, you might like it, but it's not done. It has
it's
a lot.
It
has like green screen instead of the visual effects shots plugged in. It's got a ton of things that are that make it less.
It's like taking cookies out of the oven before they're finished.
Now, some people like that. Some people like eating those unfinished cookies,
or just the raw cookie dough. But
yeah. and then Mark Lungo's asking about Boris Karloff's Thriller. Thriller was a good show, an extremely variable show. My friend Doug Hayes, who was one of the great directors on Twilight Zone, he was known for coming in and fixing shows that were in trouble. And at one point, when Thriller first came out, it was sort of these kind of stories like bank heists and things like that. And Boris Karloff was the host, and it was tanking in the ratings. And so they brought Doug in and they said, we watch a couple of episodes and tell us what's wrong, what we're doing wrong. And he said, well, if it was Richard Widmark's Thriller, then you would have these crime stories and it would make sense. But this is Boris Karloff's Thriller, and you need spooky old houses and clanking chains and things that go bump in the night. And they said, oh, that's great. Can you do one of those? So he did. He wrote and directed an episode with all that, horror, all those horror tropes, and that set the tone of the show from then on. And then Doug wrote and directed another really good episode called The Hungry Glass that starred William Shatner, and who was a pal of his, and that got the show on the right foot. And The Hungry Glass is a really, really fun episode. So yeah, cool stuff.
Wow, there we go.
Yeah,
and then Forgiveness Part 2 is what we're currently raising money to shoot.
Yes,
to film.
And again, for those who came in a little late, we've got a Kickstarter campaign. It's listed down below. It's only got 6 more days. We're trying to get up above 50,000, and and anything that you can do to help us with that, it's very important, because if we go below 48,000, we don't get any of the money, and that will really throw a monkey wrench into things, because we we're planning on shooting the fourth hour of Forgiveness as soon as the pandemic is over. And in the meantime, I'm just as a freebie, I'm going to be pulling together an episode of Space Command with our actors where they're going to shoot in their own places using their own cameras, probably against green screen and other ideas. And it's going to be really, really fun. And that's what I'm starting to pull together now. It's not an easy task, but it's very, very fun.
Right. Oh, okay. So yes. Well, yes, Rose. I remember looking at your stuff. You'll be getting both. Getting both Space Command Redemption and the first hour of Space Command Forgiveness. I don't know if you've donated in this current campaign.
For the second
you'll
hour.
be getting the second hour as well.
Yeah. And again,
because our last campaign did not fund the second hour. It funded the first hour.
Yes.
So everybody
which we've shot.
Right. Which we have shot and which we are working on post for.
And by the way, one thing that we added in recent times, just a few months ago, was in Forgiveness was a scene with Nichelle Nichols.
Yes.
And that was wonderful because I met her when I was 10, when Star Trek was on the air. And she was so kind and so wonderful. And so I ran into her at Comic-Con. She asked if she could sign at our booth, which we did that year. And then it took about a year to get everything in place so that we could shoot a scene with her, and she was wonderful, and the scene came out great, and I'm so glad that it's in there because she's such an icon and so instrumental in my life, and so that was terrific. And again, I love working with my heroes. I mean, George Takei in World Enough and Time, and on and on. I mean, Bob Picardo. I mean, all these people are so much fun to work with and such an honor. James Hong, my God, it was so great working with him in Forgiveness.
Kevin Scott says, I love the spaceship designs. Made my own composition and doing a pencil drawing. I'll send it when it's finished.
Well, actually, that's great. And we're actually going to be having a Space Command poster contest because since everyone's stuck at home, it seems like a good time. So we're going to have a Space Command poster contest. I'll announce the prizes soon. They'll include classic editions of science fiction books. They'll include signed posters of Space Command, tons of really cool stuff. And also one category of that, there'll be the poster category, and there'll also be a comic book cover category because we're doing the Space Command comic books. And and of course the winner will get, we'll use the poster, and also we'll use the cover of the comic. And so it's going to be really, really fun. And we're also starting up the spacesuit contest again because again, everyone's cooped up at home. Want to build a spacesuit? Yes,
especially
of course
if you're
a
cosplayer.
Yes, of course you do. So that's going to be super fun, and we'll be posting more details about that in the next day or two.
And that would be interesting, I think, for cosplayers, because usually cosplayers will take an image, something, and then try to recreate it in real life, whether it's something like an animated or a drawing or a comic book type thing, and then like try and recreate it. But this is, you get to make your own spacesuit. You get to design it yourself.
Well, there's categories where you can design them, and there's also categories where we have designs and you can build them, from Ian McCaig's design. For instance, Ian McCaig created Darth Maul, he created Queen Amidala, the looks of those characters, Thanos in Endgame, etc. So he's the leading character designer in fantasy and science fiction films, and you get to do something that he designed. So that's incredibly cool.
Very good question from Subvids. Will we have access to any photos or images for the poster design?
Yes. And so again, we have to set that up so that you can access those things.
Right.
And again,
when we put out the notification, the official rules and everything of the contest, we'll include links to pertinent photos. And stuff like that.
Yes, and we have tons of that stuff. And then also, and you say, can I get some of what is keeping you so mellow? Well, what's keeping me so mellow is the fact that I have wonderful Elaine, who's sitting over there writing on a script right now. But it's basically, I'm living the dream. This is a great life. I'm being careful with the coronavirus, as we all are. So I'm being mindful of what people are telling us and staying at home by and large. Except when I go take the dogs for a walk or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of like I've been through many a thing in this life. We were in West Hollywood. The AIDS crisis hit this community very, very hard. So many of the people I knew back then sadly fell ill. Many passed away, including someone I went to high school with. It's sort of like you find love in your life, you find meaning in your life, you do work that is meaningful to you. let people know you love them, and you basically try to be a force for good in the world. So that's you know so that's how it works. It's pretty simple. So so that's what I do. So but again, anyone who wants to be part of Space Command, whether it's building a spacesuit, designing something, making a prop, a ray gun, or whatever, or just helping on like Adam does with everything that needs to be done. There's a million things, and I'm just one guy, so I can't do all of it. So we have a small team, but a very good team. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate your comment about me being blessed. I feel that very strongly.
So Vid says, I'd love to have a play with that. How will we be notified? We'll make a video.
We'll announce it here on Mr. Sci-Fi, and we'll post it on my Facebook page and my Twitter feed, and send the news out to our backers. So yeah.
And speaking of our Facebook and Twitter, and we also have an Instagram. Be sure to follow us on our social media, Space Command TV on Twitter, Space Command Series on Instagram.
And then there's also the Mark Zickery Facebook, at Mark Zickery, Twitter, and then Mark Zickery on Facebook. But Facebook I have a dilemma with, because I've hit 5,000 friends. And so you and I, Adam, will have to figure out how to have people be able to follow me on Facebook.
Well, you make a page.
You make a page, okay. So someone who lives in the 21st century will show me. Page. Yeah, exactly.
We'll get that together.
Yeah.
We'll do a Mr. Sci-Fi Facebook page.
That'll be cool.
Yes.
And again, by the way, with all of the Space Command entries, we'll be posting the entries for the and by the way, everyone who builds a spacesuit gets credited as a spacesuit builder. Everyone who enters the contest gets credited on the show as a spacesuit builder. And but the way it works is you make a spacesuit, you send it to us, we use it. It's that simple, and really, really cool. And there's very specific rules. And again, subscribe to Mr. Sci-Fi. That's how I'm letting people know what I'm up to on a daily basis. And every day is filled with excitement. And it just keeps going. I'm very happy to be doing what I'm doing. And Elaine is working with me on Space Command, and we're it's cool. I wouldn't rather be doing anything else. So
Byron Delir says, I haven't listened to your review of Picard finale. I suppose, though, you felt it fell short. It's kind of sad, right? So much promise. Do you think Picard's second season will work?
Mm-hmm. It was better than Discovery, in my opinion, because it wasn't quite so much of a mishmash. Watching Star Trek Discovery was like watching cars collide, because there'd be all these differing opinions in the writers' room pulling it this way and that, and it just got so complicated and so loopy in its way. And the second season was better than the first, but still not swell. And then Picard was better, but the challenge with that was he was far too passive throughout as a character. He was there were various things, and I go into it in the finale review. But the good part was that you get to see Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis and Brent Spiner and Jerry Ryan in playing those roles again, and that was great. And I've heard that they are going to be doing a Jerry Ryan 7 of 9 TV show, and I think that's terrific. Let's all sit down and watch that. That'll be great.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
Let's see. I thought of a good question.
Sure, please.
You talk a lot about writers' rooms. Mm-hmm. If Space Command gets picked up, do you have a plan to hire writers?
It's funny. On Space Command, probably for the most part, we'll be writing it. It'll just be Elaine and me writing it, because it's just a 12-hour season. But I'm creating the Showrunners Network, where I'm creating shows with Rockne O'Bannon, who created Farscape and Defiance and Alien Nation, and with Mark Ferguson and his partner, Hawk Ostby, who created The Expanse and run that show, and so forth. And in that case, it's 6 series, and we'll definitely need writers' rooms for those 6 shows. Absolutely.
Kappa 1611 says, Red Letter Media calls Discovery the producer show because of how many producer credits it has.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, yeah. I mean, but again, it's just like every TV show I was on staff on, either as a story editor or as a producer, had 3 people on the writing staff, only 3 for a 22-episode season, because when you get up to 10 or 20 writers in a writer's room, there's so much dissension and so many opinions that it's almost impossible to get anything done, and making something of quality is very, very difficult. And so I favor a smaller writer's room, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can't get much smaller than husband and wife.
Yes. Yes.
Axanar, Dave Lee says Axanar is better than Discovery.
Well, yeah. Exactly. But again, it's everyone has a right to their opinion, in my opinion.
Yes.
And if someone loves Discovery or if someone loves Picard, fine. There's plenty of room for everybody.
Star Trek.
Well, but we're living in an age of so many shows and so much content and so much everything. I'm just glad that I'm able to make Space Command and the other projects I'm doing, because that's my worldview. That's my expression and what I'm sharing with the world. So I'm, as long as we can keep the financial wheels turning. I mean, we're making Space Command for so much less than a network show. I mean, Star Trek Discovery was up over $10 million an episode. Space Command's coming in at about $300,000 an episode. That's considering the enormous amount of production that we're delivering in terms of all these visual effects shots, 900 visual effects shots per hour, all of those things. We're pulling off miracles, and we don't need a lot of money, but we do need some. And that's where the Kickstarter campaign is so important. And buying Space Command shares for $7,500 is very important. And I even have a Patreon page, just patreon.com/Mark Zickery, and it generates a little money, but every little bit helps, because what I'm doing is I'm using all the inventiveness at my command to make this a wonderful show, and I'm very proud of it.
Eric Berg says, looking forward to Jonathan Frakes and Armin Shimmerman.
Yeah. Now, Armin, I've already written his role. The script is already completed. He's great. Christina Moses is going to be in it. Armin plays Bob Picardo's grandson, interestingly enough. Christina Moses plays his daughter. And that one, we just have to shoot the ones between it to get to it. But I'm going to reach out to Armin and see if he's open to being in this extra episode of Space Command. Beyond that, Jonathan Frakes I've talked to about being in Space Command. He hasn't committed yet, but I like him very much. We've known each other for a long, long time, and I'm very hopeful.
And before Rose signs off, she wants to ask, what do you think of the new Twilight Zone series?
I thought it was a squandered opportunity. I thought that if Jordan Peele had brought his A game to it and his full attention to it, it would have been great. I thought Get Out was terrific. I thought Us was a very good film. I think he was thinking Twilight Zone would be easy, and he kind of handed off to a writing staff who didn't understand how difficult it is. And I think it was by and large very disappointing.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us, Rose. Again.
Yeah, thank you, Rose.
Mark Lungo asks, when will the novel be released and who's publishing it?
What we're going to do with the novel is I think we're going to put it up on Amazon, just, publish it ourselves through Amazon CreateSpace and listing of Ingram and so forth. We don't really need a major publisher at this stage for that novel. Because we have the cover, which is gorgeous, by Jeff Hayes. We've got Maya's wonderful writing. We've got the script that she's basing it on by Elaine and myself. And so I think it's just more easy. People will be able to go on Amazon or anywhere pretty much and order it, Barnes & Noble. And so we really don't need the infrastructure of a publisher taking 90% of the money for no work, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my thought. So Space Command rocks.
Definitely like what I see. The 50s style ships, love them.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too. And because I love the aesthetic, I love those artists from the 50s, whether it's the George Pal movies or it's the covers of Kelly Freas or Ed Emshwiller or any of those wonderful, wonderful artists from that period, the magazine covers, the book covers. And it's so funny. It's so amazing to me, because when I came up with this as the aesthetic of Space Command, I little dreamed that Elon Musk would create silver spaceship, a silver spaceship, just like all the ones that we saw in those movies and TV shows and books.
And he did.
Yes. And so it's wonderful that he's building a rocket. I mean, Heinlein, all those science fiction writers were talking about that we would get to the moon because some crazy millionaire would bankroll a trip to the moon. And here's Elon Musk, crazy billionaire, doing that. Trips to the moon, trips to Mars, etc. So I'm really rooting for Elon. I really hope he makes it to Mars. I think he will. He's a very determined man.
Yeah. Captain Mark says he loves the way they take off.
Yes.
The way the Paladin takes off.
Exactly, which is a tribute to When Worlds Collide and also the Fireball XL5, a wonderful show from my childhood.
And Gregory Krug says, off topic, did you know Kurt Vonnegut.
I corresponded with Vonnegut. In fact, if you look behind me, that blue framed letter is written to me by Kurt Vonnegut. Interestingly enough, I never met him. I would have really liked to have. He's one of my favorite writers. I love, Slaughterhouse-Five is a great book. Man, I've read almost all of his books, and they're wonderful. His short stories are very good too. He had such a unique voice, and I would have loved to have met him. And probably at some point I should name a character after him, because although he tried very hard to distinguish himself as someone who was not a science fiction writer, many of his books, I mean, certainly Sirens of Titan is a science fiction novel. Certainly Slaughterhouse-Five is. Many of his novels are science fiction. And of course, he created Kilgore Trout as sort of his tip of the hat to Theodore Sturgeon, who was one of my great friends and mentors. Get it, Sturgeon, Trout, Theodore, Kilgore, etc. And though Philip Jose Farmer always thought that he was the Kilgore Trout in the flesh, and he actually wrote a book as Kilgore Trout, Venus on the Half Shell, and people thought that was by Vonnegut, but it was actually written by Philip Jose Farmer pseudonymously. So, but Vonnegut was one of a kind. He was terrific.
Rose says good night. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Hope you can do this next week.
Well, maybe during the coronavirus, we'll make this a regular thing.
Maybe.
We are doing live chats on Thursday nights at 6:30 p.m. for my roundtable, and bringing in the Mr. Sci-Fi audience as well. So
yes.
Happy to be here. Happy to be answering questions. I mean, you guys make it all happen. It's, and again, it's very, very important to to do what we all can, because none of it comes about without all of us helping.
Dave Lee says Ray Bradbury would have liked Space
Yes.
Command.
Well, Ray was a dear friend and mentor. I knew him for over 10 years. I'd go to his house once a month, and we'd just sit and talk about life and career and art. And in fact, he let me write an introduction to the complete Martian Chronicles, which was a huge honor. And we also talked about doing a miniseries based on his Mars stories that weren't in the Martian Chronicles. It was called Ray Bradbury's Lost Mars. I outlined it. Michael Nankin was aboard to direct and produce it with me. Michael Nankin was one of the great directors from Battlestar Galactica, and also an executive producer from Defiance. Ray would have loved it. Absolutely. And Park Hill, Captain Park Hill, is named after a character in Martian Chronicles. And of course, we have, Lieutenant Bradbury, which is definitely my little tribute to Ray. And he was, to have Ray Bradbury as a friend was just such an honor, and just I learned so much from him.
I Spy Guy says, I'm so glad there is some bright spot in the face of all of this. Watching the state of San Francisco.
Science fiction.
Oh, science fiction. Yeah, it's been very hard. I've been a longtime fan and will continue to support you all. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. And again, if any of you guys can go to the Kickstarter campaign and help us a bit, that'd be very, very helpful. Because Kickstarter is all or nothing. If we slip below 48,000, we lose it all, and we have 6 days left. So I'm holding my breath, but every little bit helps.
Eric Berg says, I hope someday someone does a film of Fahrenheit 451. The British version is good, but not the best.
Well, it's interesting. I like the Truffaut version, the Francois Truffaut version, which is the one starring Oscar Werner from 1967. I think it's a very good film. Ray liked it very much. The recent one that HBO did, I thought was just dreadful. Didn't understand love of books at all. And Frank Darabont tried to get it made, and I actually have his script of Fahrenheit 451, which is a good script. And he wanted Matt Damon to play Montag, and I think Matt Damon would have been a great choice, but he at that point he would have had to wait 2 years for Matt Damon to become available, and so he decided not to do it. And I personally think that was a mistake. I think he should have done it back then, because it never got made, sadly. Okay.
Next we have Kevin Scott says, looking forward to the Orville next season.
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, and again, it's actually a really good time for science fiction. There's so many more shows than there were just a few years ago, and every time someone steps up to the plate, there's always a chance they'll hit a home run. So let's hope for the best.
Mark Lungos says, I'd love to see anyone from Leverage on Space Command.
I'll check it out. I haven't really watched Leverage. Again, just haven't had the time, but I'll look at who's in it, and I'll consider that seriously.
And see if, we have a connection to one of them.
Yep.
Captain Mark Gray, yes, says, do you have any William Shatner personal stories? Ooh.
Yeah. Well, it's when I was a kid, I got a Christmas present of a trip to the Star Trek set, and I was there for the last episode they ever shot. It was my friend Fred Bronson who took me. He was a few years older than me, and he ended up writing for Star Trek: The Next Generation, as did I. And So we were there on the set of Turnabout Intruder, and that day they were shooting with DeForest Kelley and Majel Barrett, who would later would become Majel Barrett Roddenberry, and William Shatner. And I remember that there was an actor. The basic plot is that this woman changes personalities with Kirk, so she's secretly in Kirk's body, and Kirk is trapped in hers. And they think that she's crazy, of course, because she's saying, "I'm Captain Kirk," and so forth. And not one of the better episodes, but certainly memorable one. And I remember that the actor who was playing Dr. Lester's, associate, had a line in sickbay where he said, "Dr. Lester has been under my supervision for 5 years." And he could not say the word supervision. And he kept saying the word superstition. And it was take after take after take. And I remember as a kid thinking, well, why don't they just say she's been under my guidance for 5 years? Why don't they just give him a different word?
Right.
But they didn't, of course. And so then at the end of the day, they finished shooting. And we walked by Shatner's dressing room, and he was in his dressing room. So Fred and I said to ourselves, well, why don't we just go in and introduce ourselves and say hi and let him know how much we value his work. So we went in, and he was bent over the sink, and his toupee was off. And when he saw us, he said, get out of the dressing room." And and the security guard hustled up and escorted us out. And so that was my memory of Shatner. And but I always say that Shatner is the best bad actor in the world. It's like he's got mannerisms. He's so hammy in his way, but my gosh, he's memorable and he's great. If you check out Mr. Sci-Fi, if you type in Wrath of Khan or Nicholas Meyer, I actually have a piece with Nicholas Meyer from a class I taught where he talks about how he got Shatner to let go of his mannerisms and actually deliver a performance in Wrath of Khan, because of course he's great in Wrath of Khan. And I think Shatner is one of a kind, and I'm so glad that we got to have Shatner in the role of Kirk, because it's interesting when you watch the first pilot of Star Trek, and it's Jeffrey Hunter's very good as Pike. He's very, very good, but that braggadocio, that quality of humor and kind of snarkiness, and that all that strange mix that Shatner, that egotism and narcissism, playing off Leonard Nimoy and playing off DeForest Kelley, it just created a chemistry that was one of a kind. And so I think we don't know if Jeffrey Hunter had been in the second Star Trek pilot. We don't know if it would have gotten greenlit. We don't know if it would have been a hit. But I think Shatner was a very fortuitous choice.
Yeah. We'll get to Mark Lungo in a second, but continuing on the thoughts of William Shatner, Captain Mark says, my wife and I spent 3 days with him, Larry Hagman and Shatner's wife, just 2 weeks before she died, when he was learning to power paraglide in Ventura.
Wow.
They have 3 days of private video, lots of private moments on video.
That's great. And again, but see, this is where science fiction is so wonderful, because we get to meet our heroes. If we go to the conventions, if we, there's so many opportunities to meet Nichelle Nichols or whomever, from shows that we love. And you don't get that opportunity in other places, in other ways. You can't meet the movie stars whose work you love. You can't meet other genres actors. There was nowhere to go to meet James Arness, for instance, if you were a Gunsmoke fan generally. But science fiction has always welcomed the writers and the actors and the fans. And I love the fact that there's that access. Now, when I was a kid, actors did not charge for their photographs. If you wrote them asking for a signed photo, they'd have to pay for that themselves, or the studio might. And usually it wouldn't be them signing the photo, it would be a secretary or somebody. But now, because they charge for photos, at first people were very aghast, but I'm in favor of it, because first of all, most actors aren't rich. And secondly, that way that it was actually them signing it, because you were there when they signed it. And I think that's great. I think that's terrific. And I'm so grateful for the actors that I've met who've been so kind to me.
Yeah. Getting back to Mark Lungo,
Sure.
Who says, time for Space Command action figures.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I'm waiting for that too.
Especially the grizzled space jockey Mark Zicree.
Yes.
Figure.
Exactly. Yes, 100%.
With kung fu grip.
Yes. Just so.
Kevin Scott again says, I had a chance to meet Shatner in 1979, but was too afraid to go through the door and shatter the dream. I was 13 at the time.
That's a shame. Yeah. Yes. Well, again, but it's still, it all, it's like their work lasts, and we can access it whenever we choose. Again, when I was a kid, you couldn't watch a movie or a TV show whenever you wanted. There were no VCRs or anything like that. So we live in a blessed age where we can watch any movie, any TV show, anytime we want. And I think YouTube is just a gift from the gods. I mean, there's so much cool stuff on YouTube on every subject imaginable. And there's tons of 1950s live TV shows. There's tons of things that would have been almost impossible to find in days gone by. So I just think we're in amazing times. I mean, I would not go back to any other time in my life. And I'm happy to be here right now with you guys.
Speaking of YouTube, Kappa 1611 says Farscape is on YouTube
cool.
as well.
That's great. That's great. And Gigi Edgley is going to be in Space Command. That we just got to get to it. Yep. So yeah, absolutely.
And Rockney O'Bannon, who was the showrunner on Farscape, is working.
We're co-creating Sweet Haven, which stars Mike Harney and Barbara Bain and Robert Picardo and Mira Furlan. I've written a role for George. I just have to lock down.
Okay.
We've talked about it, but I just have to lock down that he says yeah. But it's a really fun show. I'm writing the script now. Yeah, very fun.
Eric Berg says, I'd buy figures of Ferran Tahir and Christina Moses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just great fun. I mean, there's something about.
I personally want a Doug Jones action.
Doug Jones,
very lanky and very maneuverable.
Yes, well, I'll show you something. Hold on one second.
Oh my!
Oh gosh. Let's see if I can reach this. I'll try. Okay. Yes.
Oh yes.
Speaking of which, this is
a prototype.
This is something that's on my shelf.
Perhaps.
So this is the Doug
cardboard
Jones
cutout.
Yeah, a little Doug Jones standee. So that's pretty fun as Dor Nevin. But very, very fun stuff. So yeah, it's there's the more swag the better. Absolutely. I love all of that stuff.
And of course, we have to have our Captain Kemmer.
Yes. Ethan McDowell, yes. And
lovely
but it just keeps going. It's like everyone wants to be part of this. I think it's because Space Command is both fun and meaningful, and I'm really glad for that mix. It's not stuffy, it's not snobbish. It's just the kind of show I want to see.
Genuine.
Yeah. And it also takes time with the characters. It has respect for the characters. I mean, when I was watching Picard, it's like so many of the characters you're saying, who are these people? Why should we take this journey with them? Why should we care about them? And as a writer, you have to pay attention to that. You have to be mindful of what makes a memorable character. And and I've made a life career of studying that and learning how to do that. And again, not to slam anybody else, but it's just there's a reason that you feel an emotional kinship with a character. And that's why Spock was such a great character. God, for all those science fiction fans who felt like outsiders, who were smart but had trouble with emotions, he was just the guy.
Yeah. I Spy Guy asks, do you think we'll ever see a fun concept like the Orion slave girls ever again? Or is that kind of a thing of the past?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Orion slave girls. Susan Oliver was one of a kind, and that story of them having to paint her greener and greener because back in the lab they were color correcting it back to flesh tone is a great story. And but she was a wonderful actress, and she was so terrific and so right for that role in the first Star Trek pilot. I think that there is a place for I was going to say sexy alien girls. I mean, it's again, one has to be respectful. One has to be mindful of sexism and all of that stuff. But on the other hand, there was a point where Doug Jones was in a scene with Ethan McDowell. The only time he blew his lines was he was looking at Ethan. He was saying, "My God, that's an attractive man," and he forgot his line. Now, and Doug is straight. I mean, he's married, but it's just like and so I do cast good-looking people.
He is a good-looking guy.
Yeah, and so whether it's Angelique, but Ethan McDowell's good-looking. Certainly, Angelique Scott. Many of our actors are, and so one has to be mindful of that and careful with that. But definitely it plays in. Definitely, it's something that if one is careful, one can explore, to say the least. Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, Kappa 1611 says you're justified in saying not to slam anybody else.
Yeah. And again, I think my whole thing in life is to try to come from kindness, and that doesn't mean that I don't sometimes deviate from that if someone cuts me off in line or whatever. But but you try. If you just say, how can I be kind today? How can I be considerate? How can I be compassionate? How can I help somebody else? It makes life a lot nicer. It really does. And so I recommend it.
Mark Lungo says you should make a Space Command blooper reel.
I think that's a good idea, but poor Dave Edison. I mean, Dave Edison's probably been keeping those things, in a little file, knowing Dave. But I'll find out.
Yeah, we might release that at some point, or maybe it'll very likely once we get the DVDs going. It'll be a bonus on the DVDs.
Yes, it's fun. It's fun, and. And again, it's like, I'm not paying attention to that stuff just because I'm paying attention to making the show. And so if something gets flubbed or whatever, I usually say, okay, let's go again. And then we just get it until we get it right. Yeah.
I Spy Guy says being kind allows you to enjoy your own company more.
Yes,
very, very,
yes. Particularly in these days of solitude.
True. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's true.
Those who weren't kind are probably having a really tough time right now.
Yeah. Well, it's I think that now particularly we have to be mindful of others, and we have to make sure everyone's okay and has what they need and all of that. So and also, by the way, if you can phone people instead of texting them, I mean the people in your life, do so, because just having them hear from you will be meaningful.
Right. To hear your voice.
To
hear another human being's actual voice.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Much better than seeing a few words.
It's just different. It's just a different energy.
Yeah.
But so. Okay.
And if we could facilitate that on YouTube, we definitely would.
Yeah. Well, again,
get people to call in or something.
Well, with Mr. Sci-Fi, that's again, I try to be critical but not snarky. And it's up to everyone watching to determine how well I do that. But I'm aware of how hard it is to make all of this stuff. I mean, I don't always pull a rabbit from a hat. I do my best, but they're not all going to be Emmy winners. Yeah. I mean, it's like, when I wrote for Mantis, it was like, oh man, they're not going to let me make this good. They're going to just keep this thing mediocre no matter what I do. And not to slam anyone, but it was like, oh God. And I mean, that was such an opportunity for a great show that didn't have its chance, but that's how it goes, sometimes.
Great question from Gregory. He says, who is the one famous person, past or present, that you have not met, but would have liked to?
That's really interesting. The first one that came to mind was Mark Twain. I would love to have met Mark Twain. And Vonnegut, we mentioned that earlier.
Right.
There's so many people I would have liked to have met. It's just, I mean, I never met Heinlein, for instance. I never met Arthur C. Clarke. Those would have been really terrific. There's a ton. I mean, it's Harper Lee. I very much I corresponded with her, but I never met her. And she wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, of course. And Dickens would have been interesting. Though it's funny because the first date that Mark Twain took his future wife on, his wife to be, was to see Dickens in performance. Dickens doing a reading. He was touring the U.S. at the time, and they were not impressed. Mark Twain was not impressed with Dickens. He thought he was very stuffy, and so that's very fun that we have that record of Twain's opinion of Dickens.
I could see knowing Mark Twain's writings and stuff. I could totally see.
Yeah. Exactly. That. Yes, very fun. But I love Mark Twain's work, and so
Okay.
So
if you guys have any more questions,
or we can
wrap it up.
Yeah, we've been talking for an hour, but the bottom line is, again, we're getting Space Command done. We're very much on track. It's very important that we succeed at the Kickstarter campaign. So anything you can do to help or spread the word is much appreciated. And of course, anyone who wants to buy shares, that helps a lot too. And I think one person last time was interested in buying a half share, and I should check that because we might be able to find a way to make that work.
Maybe.
And so we'll explore that. So I think that's about it for now. We got a lot coming up soon. Eric Berg said Charlton Heston and Jimmy Stewart for me. Well, I'll tell you a great Charlton Heston story, because Charlton Heston and I, of course, were on opposite ends of the spectrum politically. He, of course, very famously was, the chairman of the NRA at one point, but he did participate in the civil rights movement, and so that blessings on him. But when I was a kid, my mom used to take me to used bookstores, and I would buy, tons of books, tons of comic books, for a nickel or a dime. And I came upon a movie script, and it was the first movie script I'd ever seen, and it was $1. It was $1. So I bought it, and I read it and started to learn about how movie scripts were written. And then when I was an adult, I came upon it again, going through boxes, and it was an original script from Ben-Hur. So at this point, I was a producer. I think I was on Sliders at that point, and I wrote Charlton Heston. I said, I'm a producer now. I learned about writing from reading that script when I was a kid. May I send it to you to be signed? And so he said, sure. So I sent it to him, and he sent it back to me, and with this wonderful letter that said, this was the draft that was written before William Wyler and I brought in the writer that ultimately did the draft that we loved, and the later draft was so much better that I've crossed out the dialogue on page 10 of your script and written in the dialogue from the later draft. And then he talked about when it won the Oscars and all these things, and it was so gracious of him and so kind. And the fact they would take the time to write a detailed letter and take the time to sign the script and annotate it that way, just a great guy in that way. He really understood that his career was thanks to his audience. And I understand that too, in terms of my career. So I'm grateful to all of you. And I'm really grateful to him for what he did for me in that small way. Great. So good.
And yeah, Captain Mark says keep on top of the Kickstarter comments. We'll have at least team.
We will.
We've got some technical issues, but we're working those out.
I'll tell you the technical issue. It's very, very funny. Kickstarter, for some reason, I went onto the Kickstarter campaign some time ago, weeks ago, and I must have pushed the wrong button because now it's in German, which I don't speak. So to answer the comments, to deal with what's on it's like I can't understand any of this, and so we're going to get that fixed. But that was why it was a little more challenging today. It's like what's comments in German, right. And so we had to go searching for that, and but we'll get it nailed down. And thank you so much for flagging that for me, Mark. I really appreciate it. I think of all of you as angels in my life, and I'm very, very lucky. So thanks, and we'll talk to you again soon. And I think we've pretty much covered it. So stay well, stay healthy, and tell the people you love that you love them.
There we go.
So
and that. Bye, guys.